know, when this issue came up about the war, I'm on the International Relations Committee. That resolution came through the committee, and the resolution had nothing to do with declaring war. It was essentially transferring power to the president. It said the president could go to war if he wants. He doesn't have to if he doesn't want. So that's unconstitutional. Only the Congress should have this responsibility. So the Congress wasn't facing up to that responsibility. So I decided to make the point that if we're to go to war, we should have a vote on a declaration of war, not a vote. So I called for the vote, which annoyed them to no end. And I told them that you'll have to defeat it because I'm going to vote against my own resolution. I'm doing this to make a point that this is what you're supposed to do. And of course, everybody voted against it, but it was not after. It was only after they were pretty strongly critical of what I was doing, because one member said what I was doing was anachronistic. That part of the Constitution, we just don't follow that anymore. I mean, that's how blatant they are about the Constitution. We're supposed to go to war to defend our Constitution. You know, it doesn't make any sense. Somebody else says, to bring this up was frivolous for me to do this. So that's the respect they have. And yet, when crisis comes, we're called, we go. I was called in the 60s. I ended up being in the Air Force for 5 years. Did my best and did my duty. Right now, I have a lot more responsibility in policy and would have a lot more as a president to direct this country away from these serious mistakes. But we will have to change these policies, because this cannot continue. It's going to be detrimental, and it lingers for so long. You know, the burden is very great medically. You know, to take care of all the veterans, and they're adding all the time. So we're going to have to save some money someplace to meet up with that responsibility. If we can just stop the bleeding and stop the killing and stop the wounding and stop the financial drain, we might be able to get back on our feet again. At the rate we're going with our foreign policy and our domestic policy, unfortunately, we are going to keep draining our resources. And this is a policy that it shouldn't be strange to us. It shouldn't be strange to America, because they keep pointing out, as you notice on the debates, that, you know, I'm different than the other ones. Why aren't you more like a Republican? And my answer is, why aren't they more like the Republicans used to be like?
That's right.
So this is, of course, the effort being made in the campaign to offer a different sort of policy. And they say, well, this is what you're saying. That sort of sounds a little radical. I said, well, I didn't know the Constitution was radical. It's pretty moderate. It's reasonable. And to defend the Constitution, why should this be radical? Of course, right now, it looks like a radical departure from the status quo. That is, hey, maybe the case is that maybe the radicals have taken over our government, and we have to reverse the trend away from it. But a balanced budget, that doesn't sound too strange to me. Protecting personal liberties, that sounds pretty reasonable. If we're called up to defend the Constitution, we go to war and fight and dying and wounded, why isn't it we don't do a better job protecting our Constitution here? Most individuals who have written about history throughout the ages say that nations will crumble from within. And so you have to also emphasize that we will be willing to fight if you're attacked against our foreign enemies, but our domestic threats are very important too. Just think of what happens when there's a war mentality going on. You know, Randolph Bourne once said that war is the health of the state. If you have a war going on, the state grows. And some people who really love the state as big government, they don't mind war too often, and the state keeps growing and growing and growing.